Here we go. Oh my God, we're here. We're live on the internet. Troy is very little. That was all good until just moments ago.
The Troy.
Honey, I shrunk the Troy.
I'm
let's
actually
fix him.
big in real life.
Let's fix him. I bet I could fix it quick. Oh yeah, here we go. Filling out.
Can he fix it? Yes, he can.
Yep.
Yay.
I'm getting
We're just gonna quote other pieces of media tonight. Honey Shrunk the Kids, Bob the Builder. Yeah, just gonna quote
just
other
keep
pieces
track.
of-
I get a tally. 1 penny for every media.
Groovy, baby.
Groovy.
I don't know if people know that
my
one.
God.
I don't know if you got that one.
That movie was
No,
so
I
long
don't.
ago. Like, I cannot.
I don't want to spoil it, but Austin Powers is in the new Space Jam.
Oh.
Did you guys know this?
What?
Yeah.
That's great.
I mean, you just spoiled
That's
it, but like,
remarkable.
okay.
You did.
No, had I cared, I
Everybody
would've
is in the
done it.
new
That's true.
Space
Everybody
Jam.
is in the new
But-
Space Jam.
This is the stat that I heard, Troy, that like Austin Powers is officially as old now from when the movie released as he was when he came out of the cryo freeze, like when the movie came out. So like that hurts, dude. That was like very like definitive, like right at the end of like my high school career, like senior year, junior year, something like that, you know.
This is
And,
the same thing of
God,
like
talk
if
about
that 70s show were like made now, it would be like that. Is it that 90s show or is it actually that? It would be like it would be like that 2000 show. Is that right? Because it's the 90s in the 70s.
Oh god!
So you just go back 20 years. It would be 2001. The show would be set in 2001. Yeah, that's messed up. Right?
We don't like it. We don't like.
No.
Let's put it this way: the Wonder Years would have been set in the early '90s if it were on today.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, like all these things are of a like similar time frame, right? That's like why we keep getting here. But you go back 20 years, it really is wild. Like I've had that moment a few times in like the last couple of years of my life of like reflecting on like my parents and the way they talked about the 60s and me being like, yeah, that was 1,000 years ago. And then me being like, oh my God, no, that like the 80s was actually longer ago than the 60s was for them when they were saying it. This is terrifying. Anyway, time. It's a fascinating thing for us to experience.
It is a weird soup.
It is. It's very weird. And so, yeah, I think like to that end, time being weird, we're just going to hang out a little bit tonight. This is the time where we normally get together and play D&D in space. But we're clearly only 4 out of 8. And I'm a little bit under the weather and banged up and trying to figure out if it's just normal anxiety brain or if I'm actually getting sick. And so I just said, let's hang out tonight, because this is like a thing that I've done on all the other shows. We do it on like Firelight Tales. We've done it a couple times. We did it on Dragonfly, like right at the end of season 1. We're like, let's just hang out and talk a little bit.
Dragonfly at the end of season 1?
Yeah.
Dragonfly. Did I just say that? Kings of Neon.
There we go.
I did. At the end of Kings of Neon, like season 1, we like hung out and just like talked about like what do we think so far, the characters, our experience with the game. Like that was different because we're trying something new, and for this we're like playing D&D.
But also trying something new, right? I mean,
we are definitely trying something new. Yeah, like I've never run a Spelljammer campaign or anything even vaguely resembling that. And so I don't know how much this feels like that to anybody who like loves that material. Like I'm not emulating it that closely or whatever. But yeah, it is new. We're like a new group all like kind of getting comfortable with each other and like getting familiar in the characters and all that stuff. Yeah, and I just was curious like what your guys' vibes are so far. What your experience is so far with Dragonfly specifically, I guess.
Well, for all of the people who are watching this who've never watched an episode of Dragonfly, which I'm sure is many of
So
you.
many millions.
Yeah, I've played the Professor Reginald Frybottom, and yeah, it's very fun. Like I feel like it's just a fun crew. I feel like I'm ready for a laugh every time I come on here, and I feel like Rich, your style of DMing is one that's like really interesting combat and enemies, and then also like you get to lay back and have fun. Like it's not so maybe if I were playing on Monday nights I might feel differently, but it's not like super intense. Oh my gosh, we're gonna die all the time, and that's kind of the vibe I was going for, especially because like we aren't the same crew every Tuesday night, right? So it feels more like a more like a bar. It feels more like Cheers, where you like show up and it's like, oh, who's here today? All right, cool, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. Yep. I was thinking about that part of it. Like conceptually in the beginning, it felt like really cool, right? So like we all play in West Marches games together, right? Taylor has run in my like home West Marches game for years. We all like work together at post show recaps as like DMs, right? Grace and Troy and I running like a big sprawling West Marches campaign, and like to that end, I felt like might be a fun way to do that. And I did have this. I am not like a hardcore Star Trek guy, though I've seen like an episode or two here or there, but it felt like that vibe of like who gets off the ship every week, you know? Like, I don't know, so much sci-fi that I love. You have these big ensemble casts, right? Like Battlestar Galactica was a big touchstone for me. And like you don't have the same people like every week, episode to episode. And so I've like wanted to like keep it connected and maintain a through line while like creating ways for there to be like different iterations of you guys, you know? And I'm like finding my footing there as we go. I think like I'm getting better at it. But this game has been a lot of fun with like, yeah, weird combat. Like weird combat. I get to play with like weird stuff that I wouldn't normally go to in like the traditional fantasy land D&D.
So many things with wings.
Yes.
All the things,
Yeah.
all the things that fly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I love that, like, the space. I don't know if aesthetic is the right word, but that sort of genre of like enemies. Like I love the like, you know, thought of running into, you know, a giant space whale. Like I just love big things, and space is rather vast and full of really large and terrible things, as well as really large and cool things. And I really like that. And like you know, I tend to lean towards characters that have a passion for something, but they also don't know a lot about it. And like Lux, you know, being raised by these like merchant parents, like, you know, she kind of had like a really good life, and her parents, like, you know, the legends of the Five and space travel and exploration, and like it's kind of like, you know, my D&D characters are like my kids are like, oh, Lux, like, look at you, you're like doing just what you wanted to do. Go have fun. But I love it.
Cool. I don't know. I dig like going back through these old books, and that's been like some of the most fun for me. When I say like inspired by Spelljammer, right? Like I'm not trying to like play the Spelljammer campaign setting, but there's so much cool stuff to like pull out of there, from like the ships and just like the weird idiosyncrasies that like they published in it back in the day, and like yeah, the monsters, right? To like go back to like this old stuff that hasn't been republished yet and be like, it's not just a space space whale. It's got a proper name. It's a Kinduri. You know?
Yes.
Like, they have no mouths and a whole row of eyes. And, like, they're just different enough to be weird, but, like, so familiar and evocative of that, like any kind of, like, nautical thing, right? Of, like, the whales next to the ship in the submarine or whatever, like, out the porthole. Like, I love all that stuff. And, yeah. I like that Lux has like a happy family somewhere and had a healthy upbringing.
Yeah,
It's a really nice
first
change of
for
pace.
all of my D&D characters. Either they're parentless or they have bad parents, or they don't know that their parents are bad yet. Like, that's the whole thing. But yeah, I really like it, and like I hope that Lux isn't like super annoying, but
I don't think she is. I think she's
I
like
love
pretty
it.
compelling.
Yes.
I like wanted to because in this like stretch I made like Lyra for our Sundays for our City of Mist game, and I like have talked about it with that group about how she's a heavy character. Like she has like there's like some trauma there that like I haven't thought about, and like that, you know, she's one of those characters. She doesn't know like her parents, or like she has a bad relationship with them. Like she's has the powers of the One Ring and is like slowly falling deeper and deeper into like that like evil, but also not wanting to be evil. So she has a lot of like conflict, and she's a dark, like heavy character and very angsty.
Yeah,
and then
it's like dark. There's this shadow that
Yes.
looms over her. Yeah.
then there's Eerie for our Monday nights, who's like pretty middle ground. They've been through some shit. They went through like a lot of stuff. They're like fighting their way, this like battle that is seemingly unwinnable. And, you know, Eerie and her boys. And then there's Lux. And I needed like let's put the candle on the cake with this happy ball of light, you know. This is this optimistic, loud, excitable, like naive little child, and send her off into space.
I think that like Lux is great, yeah, and like the like singular, not that like she's just that, but like the character trait of like she's always yelling. Like I think you
love
just
it.
like said that in like the first episode. I think there was a point where you just said that. You were like, I think she's always yelling.
Yeah.
You know?
And then
like, it so immediately like clarifies something about her, you know.
I said this
that,
last week when when Rich plays Lux, it's
Yes.
like to me it has very like 80s kid energy, like from a Spielberg movie or something, of like, we gotta go, like come on, like that's very much like you know, it's just like them riding on bikes down the street or something. Like that's to me the energy that sort of Lux gives. And I really like it. I mean, it's really interesting. I think that they're from like the West Merchants game they're doing in the Discord, that like that's my first experience of D&D outside of like my home games, really. Like I've had one home game we started playing a half ago ish, and I don't know, we just jumped into it. And so when I was looking at the Discords, that like so many people, it's like this dark background, you know, it's what's the thing that's like pulling you in, and everything else is like dark, you know, whatever. So you can be like the person coming out of that darkness. And I feel like from the way we sort of, when we played that game, the game of what's the game to like design the backstory of
Microscope. We played Microscope.
I just feel like, and I think Josh said at one point, he's like, I want there to be a lot of whimsy. I do feel like we obviously everybody has character stuff that I don't know we've like all like dived into or know about each other, but it does seem for the most part like everybody's kind of like on the ship, like okay, cool, like that's fine. And there's a lot of like hope there that I think is also fun, that like to dive in. I felt that in like the bar fight of like, now there's like this like of like we're just like fun adventurers just like trying to like find information, and suddenly we're in this like bar fight and we might be killing this guy, you know, like you and I are like I don't know if we should do this, like Doug's just like we got it, like I don't know, tension and the like the whimsy that like our characters have like gone to explore space and now are like finding ourselves like very deep. And we joked that like we didn't want to be like chased through space, and immediately we're like people coming for us. I think it's like really fun. I think the energy is
so
fun.
good.
It is fun. I love that. Like, we did talk about it, right? We like talked a little bit in that first episode about how like we all sat down, and Microscope is like a really cool game. Like, it was the first time I'd ever really dug into it deeply, but we sat down together and played it, and it's this like history building game, right? Where you build a timeline. It's non-linear, right? Like, I can put events before the ones that you created, and you could put events afterwards, and you can destroy what I build, and I can build on like what you put there, and it's really fascinating. And I think we used it to pretty like good effect to like set up the backdrop of space. But we did identify a couple of things there of like what especially we didn't want, which was like this harrowing chase through space. We didn't want it to be like a military mission. We didn't want it to be like a dark and brooding and like heavy kind of campaign, right? And that's like very much the game that I'm running on Monday night. That is like the Adventure of the Titans airs, you know, these like poor kids running through the mountains chased by an army, you know, and like it's totally like it's horrible, right? So this like I definitively came into it like, all right, like let's keep it fun, and you guys are really like pretty lighthearted, fun characters, right? Like the darkest amongst you is the Badman, who's clearly like,
who's still
it's
like
satire
comic
on being
character.
bad. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
yeah, he's just like hilarious, right? But like it's not like you're a dark and brooding crew, you know? Like Doc's clearly got some issues to work out on people with that battle axe, but we'll get there, you know.
Yeah,
Speaking of like fun and relaxed time, so like all here chilling, we're talking and everything. Thank you all for covering everything, because I just got an email from my client's boss's boss, and I was like, oh
gosh,
Oh,
gosh.
Let's go. But it's just one of those where you're just like, the sooner I can respond to this, the better. But fortunately, it was the thing. It's like one of those where it's like it only requires 3 sentences, but I need them to be perfect. But I'm here. I'm back. I'm here. I'm on the ship. I'm with you all, flying through reminiscence of time.
No problem. No problem.
Good.
It's clutch. We all like have had those moments, right? Like live your life. That's Troy's motto.
Yeah. When I run PvPs, which hey, heads up, one might be coming. But when I run play by posts, I'm like, live your life, because here's the thing. I do care about you all as people, but more than anything, it's that I care about me and me getting to live my life and not feeling guilty about it. So if as a DM I live my life, then if I tell you to, then you know, I can't feel bad.
Yeah, you absolve yourself. It's really like important, though. It really is. So Grace, you were like talking about like you've only been playing D&D for like a year and a half, 2 years, something like that. Like you only had one campaign.
The beginning of 2020. Yeah.
Wild. So yeah, like I just love to hear like your experience in that game compared to like what we do now, right? Like I don't know, most people that are here know us from post show recaps where we all like work together, but like sum it all up really quickly. We have a game with 50 active players.
Oh, the West Marches game, yeah.
Yeah, the game that we run in post-show recaps is a 50-player game. We have 8 full-time DMs, but really like a dozen to like 15 people that are running games pretty consistently. And so it's like a big monstrosity. It's a huge beast. This is not like a typical, okay, let's get 5 friends together and play D&D every 2 weeks kind of game, you know? So that's like a huge swing. I'd just love to hear your perspective there, like deeper.
From my original game or from what I was like jumping in?
From like both.
I mean,
yeah.
I mean, the group they were playing with was nobody knew how to play D&D except for the person who was DMing, who is my good friend Jared, who has DM'd in the Discord.
Oh yeah.
So none of us knew, and we did not take it super like we did like a stupid, dress as the guards. I remember him being like, there was this moment. I think the moment I probably fell in love with D&D. He was like, the guards I think I rolled something. I rolled a persuade or deception or whatever, and then I was like, for the queen, and everybody at the table just went, yeah, for the queen, like at the same time, and then Jared was like, yeah, for the queen, and it was like this moment. I was like, oh, this is what you can do. You could just like it's like world, like I've always loved world building. I love fantasy stuff. So like, I mean, and I think the thing that's super fun about Dragonfly, but like also I imagine can sometimes be overwhelming, is like, yeah, we're going to go to this planet and you have to design the whole planet. Like if we ask I think that was the thing about stepping into the DM role, is like they could literally ask anything. It was also the fun part about being a player is like, no, I want to go like do this stupid thing. Like in my home game recently, we went to an inn, and we were talking about, we got robbed at night, and we were like, this place is terrible, whatever. It's like, yeah, we just haven't had the money for security. I was like, well, what if I invest in the inn? I become like an investor, and then all around town I always say, well, I'm an investor at the inn, over there. Like, you could just do anything in D&D, and it's so, I think that's like,
You sure can.
what's so fun about it. But also as like a DM, it's the most intimidating thing. And every week you're like, not that we go to a new planet every week, but we could just be like, we get on the ship and we're abandoning. I don't care about the portal. Like, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
And for you, it's not just like okay, it takes like this long to get there. Like, you kind of, for an episode, you have to be like, okay, yeah, there has to be a place for us to go. I just think it's like, and I think it's so fun. Like, I love world building, and that's like part of like what I've really been drawn to with D&D. But yeah, you have to have like a bunch of planets in your back pocket that like we're gonna go to.
It's part of like why I guess I felt comfortable doing this kind of thing. It's because like how long I've been thinking about D&D. Like, I've already had enough ideas that I can fill out like many planets if I had to, right?
Well, it's also nice too, right, that you don't have to deal with like having them be consistent, having them be connected, right?
Sure.
You don't have to deal with like these transitional zones between the mountains and the water. It's just like, great, we're in mountains, and then like, yeah, you want to be in water? Like, yeah, we're on a water planet now. Like, deal with it.
Yeah.
And it's also nice because like you can dip your toes into like running a water world campaign and like flavor that out for a little bit until you or the players get sick of it and then move on to something else.
Oh, no, for real. I mean, that's like a huge part of the appeal, right? As we started up, like, I really wanted to like just create a little bit of space for you guys to like fall into the characters without it being too like unrelenting and like sort of erratic, right? Of like, oh, okay, it's a different place. Because there's that thing when you start a campaign where like the players are trying to like we're all trying to like get on the same page, right? And keep track and like, wait, this person, that person, who, where did we go? And like, you forget the stuff, right? It like kind of flows through you. You're there in the moment. Like, even if we all keep our notes, like, oh, I don't have my notes this week. Oh, what was that name? So I wanted to like create a little space for like some like consistent, like, okay, here's a couple of like NPCs that we're going to deal with for a second, and like places that we can like talk about and like whatever. And I was like excited to like plant you on a planet for a couple of sessions. Like, we've ended up in the water world of Cerealia for longer than I thought, but I think we're having fun there.
I loved
like,
the first play. I loved that whole story of the
ogres,
Alis and the boy and rescuing from the cave, and I can't believe that guy turned out to be a bad guy still. I'm so mad about that, but whatever.
Yeah, it's a shame.
Yeah, that guy sucks.
Wait,
But I
wait,
love
Yeah,
that.
but the entire like city of Oni, like, oof. Good luck trying to get Reginald to stay down there, because like as soon as he found out that there's like this whole city of like magical ogres, I think the like, one reaction is to say like, ooh, that's interesting, but I feel like the gut reaction was like, get me the hell out of here.
We got a ditch. Yeah. Yeah, I like Malpiety Prime. I had this whole notion of like the ogre aristocracy. I have this like deep love for ogres, that has been only emboldened by my reading of the Wheel of Time, where ogres are like basically furbolgs.
Oh, amazing.
Like the ogre of the Wheel of Time are the furbolgs of 5e.
Amazing.
Like, literally, just even visually, they're like exactly inspired by this guy's descriptions. And so they're great. But I love this notion of like, it was a thing from like the Dragonlance campaign worlds back in the day where the ogres were like the first people, right? Even before the elves. And like the gods of good, when they created the first like thinking people, they created ogres. And ogres were like blessed and magical and all these like great things and these wonderful like attributes that we use to define people. And then they were cursed, right? They like failed. They like don't meet their standards. They like fall, that whole classic story. And they end up like the hulking, brutish things that we know today. So I'm like deeply fascinated with ogres and loved the notion of like this ogre aristocracy that was like totally fucked, but was only really fucked because of like some puppet master Machiavellian like maneuvering in the background that like wanted to restore their like nobility or whatever. Yeah. I like the A-list stuff. A-list certainly gone but not forgotten. We'll hear from A-list again.
Yeah.
So yeah, like DMing, you both, Grace and Troy, have like started DMing in like the last like 6 months. Like a lot. Is that fair to say?
6 months. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, both. Yeah. I would say starting, not technically, but like in earnest. Yes.
That surprised me, Troy. It seemed like you were like somebody who'd been DMing for like a very, very long time. Yeah. You know?
Oh, well, thank you. I guess I had run a couple of one shots that were like much more Troy enjoys designing an encounter and like a story, and less like I'm good at DMing my friends playing. Because yeah, there was like all those like really rough lessons you learn in your like first or second session ever as a DM. I thankfully got those out of the way, but I had never had the experience of like DMing for people I didn't know, DMing like as a part of a group, obviously, which is like a whole other thing that like to me is half of the fun.
It's really fun, yeah.
It's really
and
fun.
then,
Yeah.
like just getting like it's amazing to me. I guess I would say like to me it feels like it's a little bit like working out, where it's like your first couple of times it is like your muscles like really just suck, and you like it's kind of fun, but it's also like ugh. But then once you hit like a certain plateau or a certain threshold, you're like, oh yeah, no, this is good, this is fun, I'm enjoying this.
Yeah.
Oh, I loved it right away. I don't know if I was good at it, but I loved it right away. I think I'm such a like when I was playing in Jared's game, like I was such the kid who's like, teacher, didn't we have homework? Because I'd be like, someone would like roll. It's like actually, like so that's not the rule. Like I'm such a rule person. I love. And I
We've
think
talked
that's,
about this a lot, Grace.
yeah, I'm such a control like rules freak person that like D&D I think is so like it can be so good for that in the sense of like I think we've talked a lot about it. Like I love when like narratively something can happen in a game that is the result of like the rules of D&D is like so satisfying and fulfilling to me of like, yeah, they built this game and it works this way. And you're like, wow, we got this like really neat moment, you know? Yeah. So I don't know if I was good at it right away, but I loved it right away. I'm so too much of a control freak to not like it, you know?
Yeah.
Although you're not in total control as a DM.
No. That's like
So,
when you talk about like the hard lessons, Troy, like I'm curious what you think they were, because like I think that that's one of the really hard lessons for a lot of people. I think a lot of people get into the role of like DMing with this notion of like they like world building or they have an idea of like an encounter design and they want to like create this thing. And as soon as the players make first contact with it, they fuck your thing up, you know? And like now you have to like roll with it, right? And like that could be really hard, right? Like I've talked about it in a lot of like spaces where like it's the collaborative element, right? Like that really is the like singular part of like tabletop role playing games that's so different, that like you can have an idea of a story you want to tell, but once you invite all these other people and they're going to go in directions you never would, even if you're like pushing yourself to think outside the box, to think like, oh, what's the opposite of what I want or what I would do or whatever, right? I don't know. It's fascinating. And working together with a team of DMs, this is the first time I'm ever doing that on this kind of scale, Troy, and like, yeah, it's a delight. It's a delight.
Yeah, I would say in terms of like the question about like the hard lessons, I think there's a few. Like there's one that like I'm constantly learning, and it's just like my challenge as a DM is like the players always take a longer time doing a lot of things than you anticipate. And so like especially if you introduce any sort of like puzzle or any sort of confusion, any sort of door, any sort of like item, like a couple of bad rolls can really just like grind everything to a halt. And so I've had to learn to think through like, you know, failing forward in different ways, like different kinds of failure state, and like, okay, yeah, you didn't roll well, but, and we've talked about that a lot, but that's a big one for me. The other thing is like my first experience DMing, like the players, it was like, okay, you are like gathered together, each of you representing like a district of your world, right? So it's like very Hunger Games, and you are sent on a suicide mission essentially. And like go. And I think two things that I should have anticipated but I really didn't. One is that like the players aren't always going to exactly take the adventure hook the way that you intend it to be. Like if they kind of honor the social contract, like they'll go, but like they're definitely going to like shit on any holes in your logic. Or like if you're in a society where it's like, wait, why are they sending us on this? Like I think you just, as a DM, you sometimes forget to like really think in the first person of each of those characters and be like, okay, but like what is that like for them? Like how are they really going to react? Not just how would I like them to react?
Well, so I think I've made this joke a couple of times. Is we'll like start going out on an adventure in this, and it'll be like, yeah, we got to like sneak into the ogre cave, and we've brought the biggest people, and none of them have dark vision. But like, I don't know that for us, like in me, I was like, this is the group that's going, you know, like, but like, yeah, I think sometimes when you're playing with particular players who just are like, well, no, then I'm not going to do that. I remember one of I think it was the first session I ran it twice. I ran it with like in the Discord, and I ran it with my home game as like a one-off. And I remember in the one-off, they were like, they wouldn't go into the room in the library, and I was like, no, but I have a map. Like I have a map and there's goblins in there, and you have to go. Like, yeah, but now we know there's goblins in there, so we're not gonna go in. And I was like, yeah, but like you just have to go in the room, like something like they're not gonna come out, and you're not gonna go in. So I don't know what else we're gonna do. Anyway, it's just like, yeah, I think the thing of like, and so I think that's where I've grown to like I still have notes for what my session will be, but they're not as detailed as they were before of like, yeah, this room has no other entrance. No, for sure. If the door's locked and you fail the strength check, I got to get you in the room.
There's got to be a way
somehow.
There's
got to be another way, right?
Yeah, I've DM'd a whopping total of 3 times.
Oh.
And I love it, but I like have serious just like anxiety and like stress about it because I'm like such a perfectionist.
I know that about you, and that's why I wanted to ask. It is the perfectionist thing, huh? That like, what is the anxiety that holds you back from doing it? Because I know you've been interested.
I just want people to have fun, and I really like most of my life. I've been, you know, at one point in my life, I was labeled like the fun sucker because like I'm the rules lawyer and like I'm a control freak. So I like really get nervous about all that stuff. But my first session, like it was, and it's for my like audience, right? I created a session for myself that like I would love to play.
Yep.
And
this
that
is like
these
a major
characters,
lesson.
They, like these characters they would interact with, I would want to talk to and like find out about, and they were like, "Who's that? Oh, it's whoever's sister. Oh, okay."
Whatever.
And like walked away, and I was like, and then I had like my boss for the session was like, I set it up like a video game where he's like in this one building, and I'm describing the town to them. And they're like, "We want to go in that one." I'm like, "No, you can't go in that one." That is the bad guy in it. We just started.
That's the bad guy in it. Amazing.
So, but then my second session was like, it was really stupid. I think that honestly though, if I like ever did it again, it was like based off of a song I had heard, and I was like, this is really cool idea. You like have to like travel all these different towers and like gather items and like perform some sort of ritual to like get a certain something, but it like wasn't fleshed out and it wasn't where I wanted it. My third session, however, was like I wrote down in on road owner and like what's in the basement, and the owner was like really sketchy because he has like a smuggling thing in the basement, so of course they go in the basement. And yeah, that was like probably my third one was definitely the best one. Like everybody enjoyed it, and I like chased them out of this inn that was like hiding a young blue dragon like in the basement with a hoard of gold. So that was really fun. But yeah, I want to DM, but like I just am so nervous.
Yeah, I mean, I get nervous all the time, and like I've been doing this stuff forever. And like I think that's inherently part of it. Oh, geez, cameras blew up. But I think you know, here's the thing: there is always this feeling of like, oh, I want people to have fun. Oh, like is everybody having fun? And like they really are, almost all the time, right? Like the things that you're seeing that like you messed up, the stress that like, oh no, like I could have done this thing better. They don't feel any of that, and we've talked.
People
a lot
don't
about,
know
like,
what they don't know, right? Like if you're like, they didn't do that, like I did, you know,
exactly.
You know, they don't know. I don't know.
No, I mean, it's exactly that. And like Troy and I have talked a lot about like low prep, because that's a thing for me that I had to transition into. Like you talk about all the world building, Grace, and like I spent so many years like doing these really small groups over like long periods of time for the campaigns that I ran. And I would have the stuff written out like years in advance, you know, because like I would write the adventure that it takes them so long to do everything, every door, every item, like everything is a conversation, every failed roll, every NPC, like that's 20 minutes, you know? And so like shifting to like prep for West March's game where you have like these different groups coming in every week. I don't know. It was a real like major transition for me in terms of like how I think about it and how much prep like to put into the session, right? Like I still put a good deal of time into like most of the sessions I run, especially the ones here on the stream and like the private games. But coming in with like, here's my bullet points, you know, here's like the couple of things I know, and rolling like full improv is like a lot of fun sometimes, right?
Oh yeah.
And like the players, like it just gives them that much more room to fill the space up and like tell you what you didn't know but like are going to discover about this town that you created or whatever, right?
Troy, I don't know if you want to join me, but I offered up as one of the marathon game incentives was for the budgets was I will run like it's like totally improv, but also like people just like give me like lines of dialogue, like very much like Who's on This Anyway. Like you
that.
all the names you've come up with and I pull them from a list. Like oh, you meet this person, then their name is, I look on the list and that's what their name is.
That's
like this is
cool.
who they are. Like yeah, lines of dialogue. Like be like so you set yourself up like
Yeah.
And then he said to me the most important thing, and then you pull the thing. It's just like this bacon is really good, and like whatever.
Got a donut
So,
in my pocket. Yeah.
Well, that's a lot of like. I think
Yeah.
that's a lot of like my comfort as a DM is my background doing improv theater, right? I did improv in college for 4 years and then a lot after that. And so I got really comfortable not knowing the answers. I got really comfortable looking in an empty box that didn't really exist and saying what's inside the box. And so that piece of DMing where the players go off the rails, like I almost enjoy that more. And I will say like I lean on that so heavily to make it possible for me to run games because I definitely did that thing where the first session or two, like I over prepped. I did like 10 pages worth of stuff that like there's no way they could get through all of it. And I was just like cutting and still ran a 5.5 hour session. Right. But now, you know, now it's just like tweaking that dial based on the party that you have to say like, okay, how much do I really need to prepare for this? Like I need to have this set out, that. And then honestly, this crew is probably going to fill in the rest of the gaps. Right.
Yep.
And we have like the really good fortune in post-show recaps of like really interesting players and really interesting characters where like as DMs, we don't have to do a ton of heavy lifting for it to be a memorable adventure.
That's how I feel about this game in particular, right? Like I DM for a lot of different people that I don't know, strangers, friends, all this kind of stuff. And there's so many different sort of like tones for a D&D game to take. But yeah, like every Tuesday night, like I know you guys are gonna like take up a lot of space, you know? And some nights like, yeah, we're going to like sit there and role play for 3.5 hours and not get anywhere near any of like the maps that I've built or any of like the weird stuff. And like, that's such a like delight and a treat for me, you know, like one of the things I like most as a player, like getting to play is just like existing in character and like role playing a little bit and like talking to the other characters and being like, so what's your deal? You know, like, why are you here? Like risking life and limb with these yahoos, you know? And like building all of that out. I love it. And I feel like we're like hitting that stride with this crew that I'm really, really digging it. Yeah.
I love that we have a spaceship where I can collect NPCs and I can have my character when I'm not here, you know, creating relationships and like, you know, furthering bonds and, you know, flying and learning things and like, I don't know. I am like the type of player, like my go-to example is like talking to an ancient tree for a half an hour while the rest of the party was like, oh my gosh, Taylor. And I was like, this tree has had elves living in it for the past, I don't know how many years. I want to know what's up with him and I can talk to trees. So sorry. But I will all day. I can spend hours like, you know, making UDMs flesh out worlds with characters because I will ask 1,000 questions.
Well, that's one of the adjustments for me, like as a player on here, is like as a DM in the West Marches, I'm very cognizant of like we got to get through the story, right? And like There's so many. Like, I would love to run a session where there's like a little side plot of like the murder in the inn, and then that, if you pull that thread, totally takes you off track to go like down this like deep rabbit hole of corruption in the local town and all that kind of stuff. Like, I would love to tell those stories, and they're not well suited for this format. And so as a result, like, my brain, because this is what I've been living in for the last 6 months, is wired to be like, the DM prepped a thing, and like, let's like play the game as, the dinner party host planned it. And coming into here where it's like, there's a little bit of that. Like, Rich, you put in the time, you did plan, you have a notion of how things are going to go. But like, I think you have said, like, when we do take our time, when we do stop down, when we do get distracted, that's not necessarily a bad thing.
I love it. Yeah.
The inn is, or the tavern, taking Moorbeam to get a drink was like, I don't think something that you were like, yeah, that's what we're gonna do. Like, I think you thought we were gonna get on the ship, right? And we're just like, he's like, I have no friends, and we're like, and we were like fighting with him, like, look, your interactions with Moorbeam is like you yelling at him. I'm like, and at the end of it, it's like, after a fight, you look at it and like, all right, I respect you. Come on, like, we did fight with us, so like it worked. But yeah, like that was a moment that I felt was just like a bit organic and like just happened, and it was super fun. It
was incredibly organic. It was the whole like last hour and a half of the session, right? Like, where ultimately, like, you're just offhandedly like, oh, I've got these 24 emeralds I need to go sell.
I almost didn't. We had talked to the forest or whatever, a forest, and then I was just like, oh yeah, I got emeralds to sell. So we go and get Moorbeam.
Yeah, like, and you're just like, is there like a place I could sell the emeralds? And I'm like, well, of course there is. Like, of course there would be a place you could sell precious stones here in town, and like, it's run by Noctor Warbeam, like,
I want to go back there at some point in disguise, just like in my Fearbolg magic. I would like to go see how the revolution is going.
Yes, I am so happy about how we left that place. It brings me such joy.
Lit some Tinder, like kindling,
Well, one of these days we're going to be like, I'm out of arrows. I need to go buy arrows. Where's the closest place to buy arrows? 6 weeks away. Like, get on a ship and fly in that direction for like 6 weeks, and then maybe you can find like a diamond or like whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I don't get any bright ideas, Rich, but
no, man, listen, I mean, like, that's the Monday game. These guys, like, the whole joke last night is the NPC every round was just counting arrows. Like, okay, 37, 35, like, they're trapped in the mountains, dude. They're carrying around, like, thousands of pounds of gold that, like, they haven't met a merchant since day one. We're on, like, session 25,
Yeah.
So I feel, yeah.
You want to hear a wild fact about gold that I recently learned? Of all the gold that humans have mined in all of history, can fit in a 20 meter by 20 meter by 20 meter cube.
No way. What?
All the gold ever mined in human history can fit in that small of a space.
A 20 meter by 20 meter by 20 meter cube. So 20 meters is much bigger than it sounds like.
Like 60 feet. But like a 60 foot by 60.
But that's not that big.
That's not that big. It's smaller than a football field.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Not in Faerun. There's a lot more gold.
It's fortunate that dragons and dwarves are mining gold in Faerun. Yeah.
True.
Yeah. How many rooms have we all had where, like, I don't know, I mean, maybe it's just me, like, how many rooms where, like, you walk in and it's like, oh, it's a Scrooge McDuck swimming pool full of gold. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but, I like to imagine that, like, gold pieces in these societies are not actually full gold.
Right.
They're, like, gold-plated or gold alloy or something like that, right? They're gold. They still have value. But
they're also likely like very thin, like flattened out. These are not like big hefty things. I don't know. We're playing in like fantasy land, right? Everybody can fly. Every person on your ship. You guys have a spaceship. Everyone has magic. Like here, it's much less concerning. But in other D&Ds, like D&D is weird. Yeah, gold. It's the least of my concerns.
That first episode when you were like, the ship, you have to have magic to use it, which is every single person on the ship. It's like, oh man.
Yeah, that's 5e.
What?
5e. Yeah.
Of like the few things that like I stole from like Spelljammer is this notion that there's like a Spelljammer helm, and that's how you like steer the ship. There's different kinds of helms. They're like a straight up magic item. It's pretty like translatable for me to like evolve them from the books of like second edition to like current 5e stuff, right? And so like, okay, back then they're like, you need like a wizard or a cleric. Like they're the only people who can run it. You have to have magic, like powerful magic, to be able to run this thing. And I'm like, okay, so let's stick with that magic. So every single person, including like the single class, like rogue, like all of them. Okay, cool, great. This is perfect.
It's really great. I like it. It would be kind of funny if there was one person who like doesn't know how to fly a ship, and we would like teach them. But okay.
I
don't know that Reggie's actually flown the ship yet. Maybe
in an episode you weren't there, because that's typically when you fly the ship.
I know. I tend to watch the episodes I'm not there. I don't remember.
I try to keep it mostly to Lux and Jake, as I feel they are likely the most like proficient pilots.
Yeah. You know? Well, we have like the
pilot and the smuggler.
Yeah.
And you're proficient in vehicles, right?
Yes. Yeah. We both have vehicle
space
proficiency.
Vehicles.
But
I like to imagine Reggie's like just like the British noble on the countryside driving a cart in the 20s for the first time, and it's just like, well, this is certainly something. Goodness, I'm not. Well, make way, please.
That's one of my favorite things, is like picturing everybody's flight style. Yeah. Like, oh my gosh, I love it so much.
Is Lux taking like evasive maneuvers even when she doesn't have to? Is that
she's like definitely like,
you can feel
like
the ship is moving faster.
Yes,
like when Lux is driving, like this is past the speed limit, you know?
Yes, 100%. She's like so confident in herself and her ability that she just is like, okay, here we go. I'm gonna land on this rock.
I've thought a lot. I talk a lot about Matt Colville. I'm a big fan of his, right? He just published Strongholds and Followers, or he published Kingdoms and Warfare. Yeah. Strongholds and Followers was a couple of years ago. But he had the Chain of Acheron, was like a D&D game that he streamed after his first Kickstarter. And his whole thing is they were a mercenary company, and each member of the mercenary company had these like abilities that they could use, right? For their rank, their kind of like title. And so I've thought a lot about like evolving that. Like I had this notion of each of you having like a title, a rank, a job, or whatever it is on the ship that gives you like a cool little thing that you can do. And I like hesitated on it initially because I was like, I want to see more of the characters before I like assign you these kind of like arbitrary things. You know, I get like so excited about an idea as a DM sometimes that I have to like slow down and be like, does this idea fit this session, this adventuring party, this adventure, whatever it is, right? This character.
I think at the beginning there, I certainly felt a little of like, it's like, okay, you're on the ship. Like, what are you doing? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I know that's the whole point. Like, I should know what Ray is doing, but like, I really don't know. I don't know Ray enough to be like, this is what Ray is doing on a ship for like 7 hours or whatever. And I feel like the more we've gone, I don't really know what Ray does when we're on the ship, but I do feel like now, I think the one thing that like, to me is really good, I think, is that like, you can play the people who aren't there. I think is one thing that's like a really strong indicator that like the characters are pretty well defined and like they have personality and they're distinct enough that like you can play them. And I'm like, oh, yep, that's Lux. Oh, that's the bad man. That's Jake. Like you can like, they're all so distinct, you know? And then the other thing too, now I can sort of feel it with like NPCs or like moments, you know, things where it's just like, okay, now I can see like how, you know, like Lux interacts with Warbeam or like how Ray interacts, you know? Like I feel like that's the thing where like before I think we were all just like trying to find our characters, but to just like drop us in empty space was a bit like I don't know, like hanging out, I don't know, like but now I think the more that we sort of are in our characters a bit and have them a bit more fleshed out,
I'm still really curious, like maybe not as like you've joked about like maybe we do a flashback at some point or something, but like I am really curious about like what kind of paperwork did we get? Like, do I have a job description? You know, are there like, you know, are there SMART goals for us that like, you know, Yavanna was like, you know, oh, here's the protocol for that? Or was it literally just like, I'm telling you everything verbally and I'm turning this like vessel over to you and like, oh yeah, here's an orb, check in with it if you get lost. Like those are the kinds of questions I'm curious about.
These are great questions, and I think that so like I've talked about it a little bit. I would love to do some flashbacks, like to like go back, and I think that like to Grace's point, the more we play the characters a little bit, they're like defining themselves to each of you as players, to us, and like it'll make it stronger for us to like go back. We got smart goals, I see Bison, but so I think that there's like a real like there to like dig into all of that. But I was hesitant at first when we started out that like I didn't want the first session to be about like 3 hours of like bureaucracy and filling out paperwork. And the other part of it is like sometimes when you start like a new campaign, a new adventure, and there are like all these like you don't know your own character's motivations so well yet. You're trying to like discover yourself and sort of role play out that whole scene of somebody like, okay, why are you worthy of doing this? Why should I give you this job over somebody else? What are you going to do? Here's the mandate, you know? It was like, gosh.
Why are you better? Like I'm a level 1 cleric. I don't know better than anybody.
And so I really like the notion of like leaving a lot of that ambiguous because it makes it easier for people that like come on and find us along the way to just like get on the ship with us, man. You know, like what's your mission? They're just like flying around space. That's their mission, you know? That's like really like all that we need to understand is this is a group of adventurers that like have a spaceship and they're kind of a rarity. They're like an oddball. There aren't like adventurers and spaceships all over the place, you know? And that's it. Like that's it, right? But I think a lot about those things too, Troy. Like I have a whole list of things that like I've asked myself about Ivana that like I want to know about your characters, like why you agreed to do this, you know? And so I'm excited to like revisit that, I think, as we like dig in a little further, you know?
I think it was a thing that Melissa and I did on a play-by-post recently was like really dived in. We wanted like this like very personal experience in a moment of the session, and so we like got people to fill out these like forms. But I feel like doing that like when they first signed up, like getting that form filled out would have been like useless. Like it's like I don't know who do I most need to hear from, or like what do I believe in, whatever. Like I don't know. Like let me play the character and then I'll like figure that stuff out. Like I think it's interesting that the D&D they have all the like okay, here are all the list of like flaws and bonds and traits and whatever, and it's like you can roll for them or whatever, but it's like I just like let me play my character and then I'll like figure it out, and then like
and you find it, right?
I'll find it
Yeah.
But it's also nice to like then establish at some point that like maybe some of those things did get asked, right? Maybe some of those things did, and now that we know what the answers would have been, it will like
I'm
it
with
can
you.
help. You know what I mean?
I'm with you.
Like,
Do it now. I'm just agreeing with
I
Rich's
agree.
point
Like,
that,
don't do it then. Don't like it. I think we were all really eager to like get into the action and to play with each other, and like I think that was absolutely the right call to just like jump, like put us in space. It's about being in space.
We didn't quite come in like in media res, right? But yeah, I wanted to just like orcs attack real quickly. Like, okay, you're on a spaceship. It's beautiful. Space whales. Oh my God. There's amoebas floating at your ship. Brace yourselves.
Yeah, we had like
you
a
get
holder pin
paralyzed.
coming at us. Like
Yeah.
on our first session. I was going to mention, Rich, I don't know if you have, but like tone wise, probably not a great fit for your style, but like have you looked at any of the Acquisition Incorporated stuff that they released, like that book? Because it does get into like a lot of the like guild infrastructure stuff,
the corporate stuff. Yeah, so I love a lot of like the structural stuff that's in there. I've been looking at a lot of like the Matt Colville stuff now, for like the organizations is very cool. But Acquisitions Inc., I never watched it. I was like aware of it. I've scoped a little bit of it out. Kurt took motivational speech on his character. He's playing a Valor Bard, Angus Brighthorn, the miniature Valor Bard, on Monday night on Firelight Tales. And so that was the first time I ever really like ripped it open. They're like, all right, let me really look at this thing and what else is in here, you know? And our friend Kevin plays a Verdun, Rin, who was in our West Marches game, that like keep an eye out for them maybe to pop up again. But Acquisitions Inc. does have really good stuff in there, as does Ebron. Like there was also some really cool stuff in Rising from the Last War that I was looking at from like the houses and the organizations. Yeah, Yeah, it's one of these things where, like, again, there's like an ebb and flow, right? Where, like, I don't want to give you guys too much to pay attention to or too much to keep track of all at once. Like, as is proven, right? We've done like, what, 10 episodes? And even just like over 10 episodes, keeping track of the treasure has proven to be like quite a daunting task, right?
I think it's a bit of like, it's like, I love the like space we're living in between like West Marches and like a game that's like the same 5 people every week. I do think it's really fun, but it is a thing, right? Of like, you get treasure at the end of the session, and then like, you know, Troy, you were the one to write it down, and you're not there next. You know, it's just like it's sort of we need a better system, for sure. But
Sorcerers, a better system is going to be employed. But yeah, it's just like another thing to like pay attention to, right? And to that point of like tracking the information, like knowing that we have the group ebbing and flowing, like I don't want it to feel like there's a bunch of stuff you need to know or you should know. You know, I want you to exist in that space, like with you, Taylor, a couple of weeks ago, of like, oh, what guilds? Like, well, I don't know. What guild? What do you tell them? You know? And then you get to be like, oh, yeah, the Tamfay Guild, you know? And, like, now that's, like, a thing, right? Yeah. And, like, putting your stamp on that or whatever. Yeah. That's, like, really important to me for this campaign.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
Because it's... yeah, go for it.
No, I was just thinking, like, before we were... Sorry, I got to, like, backtrack a little bit. Before we were talking about the magic, like, and using the spaceship. Mm-hmm. So, in the beginning, I remember you mentioned... like the old West Marches game, like the home game that we had. So you said it was related. There was the one time there are Githyanki in this universe, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, there's Githyanki.
Yeah, I'm worried about running into those guys at some point. But I love one of my favorite, Rich, among your many voices, your Githyanki voices are some of my favorite. We had a beloved NPC in our home game, Kala, who was just
technically Githzerai, a Githzerai
yes, technically
monk.
Githzerai.
Yeah.
But he like he drove the spaceship. Right? Like that.
With an airship. Yeah. So in that game, I've like talked about it on a couple different streams, but ultimately the players like tangled with some Githyanki. They like stole one of the Githyanki Knight's silver swords. They didn't steal it. They killed him and took his sword, right? And so the deal with the silver swords and the Githyanki is that like they're treasured artifacts amongst their entire culture. Like if you take one, they will hunt you across space and time to get it back, right? So they showed up at all times at a Christmas party, masquerading as the band. I pulled some like big Game of Thrones energy, spoilers. And so like the band transformed into Githyanki in like the Misty Bay chapter house where the adventurers hang out. Githyanki suddenly, like an astral big appears above the village. Githyanki paratroopers like dropping in all over this little like dockside town, and they kidnap a bunch of NPCs. So now it's like chapter 3. We have to go to the astral plane to rescue our NPCs, you know. And it started what amounted to an all-out assault on like a Githyanki citadel where they stole an astral brig, and the Githyanki astral brigs can like leap between the planes. That's the whole point. That's how they come like raid the prime material. Yeah. Now the problem with the Githyanki astral brigs is that you need a psionic. You need somebody who can employ psionics to like drive the engine and like open the gates or whatever. Okay. Then they had this like crazy Githzerai monk. And he was like, "Fear not, I could do this thing," you know.
That's Oliveri.
So Kala is like 100% the inspiration for Oliveri. Yeah, like Kala was like my starting point, and Oliveri is like he's like a very different character.
Yeah, to 11.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I've been very fortunate. Like I feel like the one thing I've learned from DMing is that like people do not trust NPCs, like no matter what. And I feel like I've just like and I was like figuring out the like what do you do to make sure someone, and it's just a silly voice. If you give your NPC a silly voice, that you are far likelier that they will trust
to win
your
their
character.
hearts.
Like I have this guy Teague in the West Marches game.
Magnificent.
That like in the first encounter that people ever met him, he didn't admit to eating a human. He admitted it, and people friggin' love Teague.
They love him.
It's like, you know, he just
love
silly him. Like. Eastern European voice, and so people like him,
Oh my
But it's the voice. It's the voice. Like,
Yeah,
I've never
Melissa,
fallen
you
in love
gotta
with
bring the
somebody more
silly voices. Yeah.
than
Oh my gosh. That's
old
so
Ben.
good.
Like, as soon you could just see it on all of us.
Old
We're
Ben.
like fell in love with old Ben, like
Instant.
instantly, And it's just
And-
like,
He could stab me in
Yes.
my sleep, and I'd say
Yes.
thank you.
Yeah,
The old Ben thing was
absolutely.
so funny because I was like thinking about that voice for weeks. Like I knew that there would be like an old kobold kind of like historian here, and I was like, "What's his voice?" Like I think that the kobolds all have like really nasally voices, and they're like, "Hey," but I think like old Ben is like got a warble that like. And I was like wandering around in my backyard, I'm mowing my lawn, like deafened by the lawnmower. Like that's remarkable, I'm driving around like, I'll be honest with you,
my friend my friend was like, he gave me his Google Home once because he like didn't want the government like listening in, and my joke is always like, whatever, they can hear me like talking to my dog. But now, ever since I'm DMing, it's like a lot is just like, what's the voice? What, like, the Google Home is just listening to me doing stupid voices is now what they've got me on record doing.
I haven't done a really goofy voice in a while. I gotta get back on.
Lynette is great though. Like Lynette is just like, we were doing it today. I don't know why that was happening. Oh, somebody brought up Foghorn Leghorn. I was like, I'd like to do a session that's only people like, just like a bell, like a southern belle
accent,
just like southern accent. I was like, oh, I would just be doing Lynette a bunch of times. Lynette is this great NPC that Troy has invented, who's like her husbands keep going missing, and she like runs a store. She's great. She has a bunch of diamonds.
She's magnificent. My character almost died for Lynette the first session that like we met her. Yeah, like Lynette is clearly this very wealthy seamstress who had like a closet full of diamonds that were apparently stolen, and my character was definitively like, you were robbed. You, like this single woman running this business, you were robbed by thieves.
Well, yes, of course I was. I looked around. Of course, they only took the shiny things, not the nice silky things. But
well, I say, boy. See, it's just Foghorn Leghorn. It's just
like Lynette was such a hilarious character development because it started with my aunt, who is a seamstress. And does like theatrical stuff, and is like a short blonde-haired woman who wears like the reading glasses, the old lady reading glasses. And I was like, well, it can't be exactly her. And as soon as like Bite appeared and liked shiny things, I was like, oh yeah, she also likes shiny things. She likes diamonds. And then it became like, oh, big hair. Like we're talking Texas beauty queen, like closer to God, gold. Like people would presume gold digger.
I definitely
very savvy businesswoman. And she's like the one who like, you could judge me all you want, but like I'm making more bank than you are.
I like badly want Lynette to be like part of the cast of Steel Magnolias, like as soon as you started talking, like I felt it, I just was like, okay, perfect,
with like a slight touch of like Blanche Devereaux from the Gold
very Blanche
in there as well.
No, I was big time channeling sexy Blanche. Yeah, I mean she, Lynette is remarkable. So you talk about like stylistically, like I think different. That's what the joy of like this is, having different DMs, because different people bring like such different energy and like focus. And I've like had my interest in a lot of different places. Like I clearly like built a whole world out that we're doing. Like Taylor will tell you, we started playing that Monday game in Abria, and they're like, okay, what should we know? And I'm like, nothing really. But here's the 53-page player's guide that like I wrote out for you also, by the way, that details like every background and like race and class that's been published up to this point. And so whatever, like I love that. But as like a DM coming to spend like 3 hours running the session at this point, for me, I like interest in combat. Clearly I love like tactical combat. That part of the game is like so tethered to like my experience with it as a kid and the stuff that I have fun doing. Like I like combat. I like fighting as a player, and the NPCs, like my stories are like, my stories, like some plots are like more interesting to me than others. The world building is interesting, but like you never know how the players are going to engage with that stuff, like what they're going to love, what they're not going to love, what's going to matter, what they want to dig into. Like they'll give me more indication of like what's important to like flesh out there once I'm like playing with them, like in the session sometimes. But the NPCs are like where I put a lot of thought of like, who is this person? Who
Yes.
are these people? And like, where are they coming from?
Say,
Yeah.
like speaking of like voices, like yesterday we met a very new and interesting NPC, and I think it's very evident at this point that NPCs, I'm like, if I can corral them, I will
Taylor
take
trusts
them.
all the NPCs,
Yeah, I
Melissa.
really
You
do.
just need a DM for Taylor
Come
all the
here.
time.
Great.
Come here, you ex-soldier of the Sapphire Dynasty. You're my friend now. I trust you 100%. But we met. I don't even know what he is. I have no idea what he is. He is some form of rock person. And
He's a little rock person with a beard and little rocky dreadlocks.
You sound like someone describing a first date.
he was there. He was there. He was there when the tomb of Gruul Khan was built. And I'm like, what? This is insane. I have so many questions. I have so many questions. And everybody else is like,
One of the players has just been vomited up by a behir, and he's like, I go sit in the corner. You know, I like want nothing to do with this guy. One of them's like, maybe you should leave and like go help the other people lost in the cave. Like, get out of here. Taylor's like, why don't you walk us out of here? You know?
Yeah.
I do think there is something about NPCs though that like it's so much like easier to like help you flesh out like what a place like feels like, or like what the right, like do they like trust who's in charge, do they not trust, you know, there's like ways to like make NPCs work that I think there's just like I don't know, they're like this interesting gateway into whatever world that's easier sometimes than like you know, describing the village, you know, because it's like that is less like I have a tough time DMing, and like what, you know, that thing you were saying, Taylor, earlier, but like if I describe every building and you're like, that's the one I want to go to, like why would you want to go to that other than I've described it in a way? But I feel like there's something about NPCs is like so interactive, and so can flesh out like the story you're trying to tell so much, or like such a useful, obviously they're like, I think my favorite tool to play with for sure.
It's so funny because like NPCs, as you described them, they're incredible like smoke and mirror tools, right? They like can help your players, like it can give you just the right amount of detail and just the right amount of color and advancing of the story, right? Like you want them to go to this building, right? Like, well, that's where the NPC is going, right? And so all they have to do is follow the NPC.
Yep.
What's funny is like, and maybe this is like part of my struggle or challenge is like, I often think of NPCs last and like everything else first. And I'm like, okay, so I have a sense of like what the quest is. I have a sense of like what they might encounter there in terms of like combats or like threats. I have a pretty strong sense of place here, a strong sense of setting. And I'm like, oh, that like this, are there people there? Like, should they meet people? Like, and so sometimes it's such an afterthought that like, as we're talking about this, it's like, yeah, that's actually something that like, try and flex that muscle first and see where that gets me.
Oh, well, but I think that like you talking about your improv, like that's like the most comfortable thing for you is to like slip into a character,
jump into a character.
So it makes sense to me that like your characters are last because you feel the most confident about like build, rather than like, you know, I think we all like the settings because it's just like, well, I'm gonna have to have a map, I'm gonna have to have, you know, I'm gonna have to have, you know, stat blocks for like the enemies, but the NPCs are so much easier, just like I ran a session with you, Philly, and he's one of my favorite NPCs is the old leader of the village. It was just like, yeah, who, as you were like, the group was like standing around talking to me and they're like, yeah, we want to see the leader of the village. I was like, I guess it would be an old guy. And so then I just like Googled name generators, my favorite game.
Yeah, I know. You love
name
that.
generator.
Yeah.
I don't even remember what his name was. It was this old guy who then like secretly sort of like dove into like being given a cart but didn't want anybody else to know, and he just like became my favorite thing. And it was definitely something that like last minute I was just like, okay, yeah, who is this guy? But everything else, I think you're right, like you do have to do so much prep, but then slipping into a character is like the easiest.
I just find it fascinating because, yeah, given like your background in improv, I would think Yeah, you would use that, but I think Grace is making like good points. But the NPCs can be like avatars and conduits to like so much, right? They can convey tone, they can convey culture, they can convey like so much about what you need, and like act as like foils or lures or bait or whatever, right? To like entice and draw stuff out. And I'm like constantly fascinated by like, you guys stopped in Waroto or whatever, and you met old Ben, who like I knew was there waiting for you for weeks, and I'm wandering around like practicing his voice and thinking about this guy and his background and what's his store like and what's the emporium and like what's the name. No, wouldn't have a name. It would be very like no frills. It's just a Waroto emporium, blah 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 blah. And then you're like, yeah, right, exactly. And then Grace, you're just like, oh yeah, I need to sell some emeralds, and suddenly like Nocturne Warbeam exists, right? And like, I don't know. I didn't know he was going to be there until he showed up, And then, like, it's a delight, It's a delight. And for me, they're, like, real, like, comfort zones that I'll fall into. And, like, let me roleplay a dwarf for a couple hours. Pfft, yeah, let's go. I give you, like, 1,000, like, variations of nuance in that space. But, like, you'll know when I'm playing a dwarf. Like, I love it.
I'm curious for Taylor, like you played with Rich a lot, and you've played like a bunch of different styles and tones of games with him, and just in general, like for you, like how did you do you feel like you've come to a place where like what kind of game table you like what kind of D&D you like and don't like?
Hates Rich's table.
Yeah.
I mean, but,
she's
like,
just suffering through it.
No,
She's got nowhere else to go.
Well, I was thinking about this as we were talking about like our early DM experiences, and like my first experience as a player was like we had we had a group of people who were too big to be one party, so we ran like a Tuesday session and a Thursday crew, and they were like such different flavors that I was so fortunate to be able to see like, oh, people have very different vibes.
Yes. So I like started playing D&D. It was like kind of a small group of us of like college kids, and there was myself and my one friend who was the DM who cared about the characters and the lore and world building and the story, and everybody else at the table just like wanted to play a video game like D&D. And so there was just rule breaking, fudging rolls, like it was like, at one point it was like, can I do a race of like Yeti? Can he have like automatic weapons, and can he have dinosaurs? And he got all of those things. And I was like, I'm a Circle of the Land druid. And you guys just burned down a forest. Why am I here? So like that, I've definitely, my tolerance level has like I can handle pretty much anything, I feel like, but I think I've been super spoiled by like Rich and like the years of DM experience that he had, and me coming from this college group and Rich being like, hey, you want to like come play with me and like my guys? And I was like, yeah. So I went over there and was like, what is this? What is this magical world of like this? There is a world here. There is lore here. There is like substance, and I can talk to NPCs, and like my party doesn't want to kill me, and like I'm creating cool relationships. And also the transition between that was like college to a semi-serious, very small group where my then boyfriend was the DM, and he was like very creative, and he let everybody know that he was very creative. And I like had my character who I've mentioned before, Dahlia Shea, who became the like center of the adventures because everybody else was changing characters every single game. They were
wild.
Yeah, and almost everyone had new characters, and one of them would change characters, but he was some iteration of himself. He was Sir Christopher, and then he was Chris, and then he was Christopher, and it just kept going. And then there was Chris 2.0, and it was great. I really liked Dahlia, and that's really what like held me into that game. but there wasn't like a lot there. It was like a new arc every session, and there wasn't a lot of I like didn't really know.
There just was like
Yeah,
no
I didn't know
depth
how to
and
take notes
continuity.
because
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I would write down important NPCs and important places and like, and none of it mattered.
Mm-hmm.
So like ultimately, you really like the stuff that like resonated with you about our game was like substance. There's like depth to it. There's a there to it, and then the other players are like matching your enthusiasm.
And there's big
right?
goals
like,
too. Like the semi-serious session, we had just watched Avengers Infinity War.
Oh yeah,
With like the Infinity Stones and whatever. So we were like, okay, you break out of prison. The Emperor comes to you and says, you have to find the Infinity Stones or the Eternity Stones, right?
I was gonna say, weren't they the Eternity Stones?
Not once was that ever mentioned again. Never again. So it was just there was nothing there. And yeah, so I like the substance. I like the lore. I like when my notes matter, when I can look back in my notes and be like, oh, this was this NPC. What? Oh my gosh, like that connects to this person. And I love doing that.
That's
like
my favorite thing, I think, about like DMing in the post recaps Discord is like you like build something, and then because it's like, oh, you've been doing that, and like, okay, that ties into this. You find all these like connections, and it feels like we're building. Like it doesn't feel like I'm just like building everything, and I'm whatever. It's just like it's so cool the way I think that like all the stuff. Like I think there was a while ago where like there was this one idea and I was like, I can figure out how to like map that. Like realistically, I don't feel like I'm stretching anything to like 4 stories that are already happening. And it's like, that's so cool, I think, because I think that those are fun moments for players. Like I've definitely been in the sessions in the Discord where it's like, oh, that's that person. Like that's, so I think it's so I love that part of DMing.
Yeah.
You feel, I mean, we're like role playing a game, right? We want to feel like we're like in that world. Otherwise, what are you doing? Like you might as well just play like a board game. Like the D&D is so different, right? In the sense of like, like you pick back up in this world and you can again, it's like the idea that you can do anything, and if nothing else like if none of the threads are actually like real and the people don't mean anything, then like you can't do anything. You can only do the things that like exist in the moment, right?
Yeah, the cool thing about like the poster recaps Discord too is that it feels like I don't know if there's a probably better word, but it feels realistic. Like with the wardens, like when I go on an adventure with people that I haven't before, and we run into an NPC and they're like, oh, by the way, like I know this person, Imre, this is this person. I'm like, oh, okay, so I know you through this person, and like these guys have like fought like what was it, the Nilshai? Yes, that like they had encountered before, and I was like, oh, what? This is great. This is so cool. So I love it. It feels like you are going on an adventure with friends that have like done other things, and everybody has their own little like storyline.
Part of like this big grand thing, right? Like there's real like texture to it now. It's really like incredible because like I've run for small tiny groups over years. I've run so many one shots. I did like the West Marches game, my home game that I talked about, and that was like ultimately like we peaked at about like 15 or 20 players, but like concurrently we only ever had about 10 people. Most sessions were like somewhere in the range of like 5 to 8,
And was it always you DMing, or were there multiple DMs?
Yeah, just me. Nope, just me. Just me. And so it was great, and like we had people come and go, and there was some awesome like texture in that. Like somebody would come back after not playing for months, and they would feel like a little out of sorts, but like there was familiarity, right? There were people that they remembered from last time they played, not just the player characters, but the NPCs, the community, the like space, and that experience existed there. But it's so much smaller, right? With a group of like 50 something players, like each of their experiences is so different from one another. If you like follow the path of like different adventures they've been on and people they've met and the relationships they have with the other player characters and the other NPCs, like it's really fascinating. And now it's like lived for long enough, 6 months in, that it's got this like incredible texture. There's like depth, and like Grace is talking about, like every single person who has run so much as like one session on that Discord has like a spider web of threads
Yeah.
that like came out of that, right? That we can like tug on a little bit. And it's probably like a good transition. But as we're like bracing ourselves for our 40-hour like marathon bonanza of D&D on the Post Show Recaps Discord, it's been like wild to get to like work with everybody a little bit, right? Like I've been really busy this last week and not as present in like the conversation, but I'm talking to like people individually about their sessions and like what they're planning on doing, except Troy's who I'm playing with. And
I know I would normally sometimes I bounce ideas off Troy, but he's playing in mine. So.
yeah,
Troy,
I know.
I'm gonna have
but that's
I'm
like
gonna have
part
like
of
on the
what's
way.
so fun.
I'm gonna have the most alluring NPC ever who's not part of the story, but that you want to like go down that tangent. I'm just gonna see if you bite on it. I'm just gonna me in the wood be like, hey, come here.
Look, I mean, all you have to do
He's like,
is
I'm not going to war, but there's a thing over here. If you can help me with that.
Smell
Like,
it.
Ashrin is like a warm-blooded, straight human male. So like, do with that what you will.
Okay.
I have to mention too, as we were talking about like great NPCs and like having these moments where different characters know different things. One of my like sort of like passively favorite NPCs of Rich's was the mayor of Misty Bay, the town in our like home game, Bjorn Goodman, who's like he's like
Goodman.
yes.
Bjorn Goodman, that's his name. Yeah.
He's the mayor. He's a Goodman.
But so I came
That was
That's
the
great.
joke. They were like, "Is that really his name?" And they're like, "Oh no, definitely not. Like we don't know what his last name is. We
Change
just
his
like
name.
we call him Goodman. We call him the Goodman. Like,
but I
We'll
came
meet
in.
him at some point. The bad man
Yeah.
needs to meet the Goodman.
Oh my gosh. So I came in. I met Bjorn, like, okay, cool, like cool human guy, mildly Australian, like, okay, cool. I like you, you're fun. And like there were some moments that I noticed that like some of our party would like give him money, right? And I didn't think anything about it. And then we have this like big battle of like this assault on Misty Bay.
oh, spoilers abound for my
Yes,
home
big
game.
spoilers.
But yeah, it's really good.
But
It's really good.
like it still blows my mind that I like didn't figure it out. But I don't even remember like specifically what happened. But like Bjorn like comes in and he turns into a freaking like what? He's a copper bronze
dragon. Yeah.
And I it's like midnight. I'm like still living in the like it was when I was living in the one half of like my dad's house in my own apartment, and it's like 1:12 something in the morning. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me right now? How did I not know this? I've been playing in this campaign for how long, and I didn't know. And everybody was like,
It was
what? How did you not know? And somehow.
It was great payoff because I got to do it like again and again and again. There was like a very small handful of characters that it was revealed like the town got attacked and they were like, "Where is Goodman? Where is the mayor?" And everybody's like, "I don't know, man. We got to find the mayor, And so then they see like these two dragons fighting over the city and they crash in the forest and they're like, "We better go deal with that." Like, where we don't know where Bjorn is. Like, we're like the first line of defense. It's that realization
Clark
that
Kent?
like, we're the badasses here, right? So they go like running into the woods and they save the bronze dragon and he's like, "Thank you." And then he transforms back into the naked mayor with like his ass kicked and they're like, so it was really awesome because now we get to play for months with like a very small portion of the group aware of like the secret, right? Like the slow reveals. But that night was like a really good one, Taylor, because there were these points where like what he explained was he was like, "Yo, this green dragon kicked my ass. It's way older than me. I need like we're dragons and we're weird. So like for me to actually like get more powerful, I need more in my horde. I need like a bigger gold horde. But also like I'm kind of a cool dude and just don't want to go ransack ships and like steal their gold, So the players started like bringing him. I'm talking like tens of thousands of gold. They would like show up session and be like, "Yo, Bjorn, we need you to take the 17,000 like gold that we found on Valhalla when we had to go like rescue our friend." And so eventually, like, he collected all of it. And that night was great because the town was like getting its ass kicked, and he did like some big dramatic like climb out on the roof and like jump off the building type like and yeah, Taylor's like shock after playing for like years and like not being in on the secret. It's just
so
like
good.
that's what you do.
Also,
it for,
that was
you
the
know?
session with again, speaking of NPCs, Ken Wallace Lutherwaff is written right above. I don't know if you guys can see it.
Bjorn is
Ken
an
Wallace
adult
Ken Wallace Lutherwaff is a go-to name I'll use in almost every campaign if I can find an excuse to. And then I'm just like, I dare you to remember that guy's name, you know?
I will remember that. It's not that similar from Eifenwald Mark, so.
Eifenwald Mark. I look forward to like meeting Eifenwald Mark. I only know of Eifenwald Mark in passing.
I'm loving the Thay stuff. I'm so excited for the marathons. It's gonna be so good. I said today in the chat, all my silly, stupid ideas that like don't really feel like genre, like as we're heading to war with Thay, I've like been holding off. But it's gonna be like an explosion of stupidity and silliness once the war with Thay.
You are not alone.
Yeah,
well,
we don't have long.
This was like my one thing I was gonna say that like with the West Marches, like my two biggest complaints about it, and I know you were trying to wrap up, but guess what? Deal with it.
Well,
one
not,
was
like, really. Yeah,
one was like they always have to be back in town, which is just like it's tough. It's just tough. It adds a lot of pressure to the story. But then the other is like our DMs are so creative and so like we are, I think, like we are interested in doing really cool things. And but in order to do anything that is like really world shattering or like really transformative requires like that the next few sessions after that can't be the like silly go to the circus session. And it's like that's really hard because like it's hard enough to plan a session, right? And to be like, oh well actually like your goofy thing like does it, like no one's ever saying that, but like we're all thinking that as DMs,
we're all
right, where we're
it.
like like my goofy ass thing doesn't really fit here right now, so I'm gonna have to hold that off until the tone is right. And so like that's one of the challenges here where it's like I like that this we'll see after this like marathon session where it's like the story tightens and then like we go through a period of it loosening back up, right? And then maybe at some point it's
gonna get really loose.
It's gonna get really loose.
Yeah, I got some stuff cooking that's gonna be not war with Thay.
I'm ready for it. I'm ready for it. Like you're not alone there, Grace, right? Like Troy, you said the same thing. Like, yeah, you want like you. So yeah, tone like D&D. I'm like very serious and pretentious and arrogant about my Dungeons and Dragons, and it must be important and like whatever, you know. Not really. Like also, I'm gonna give you like old Ben, you know what I mean? Not draw Warbeam. So like I could really like throw myself like in the moment into like the ridiculousness of it when I'm playing, but I tend to be like very grounded in like the stuff that I'm like thinking of and like putting together in certain ways. And so yeah, I'm like excited to like see all the goofy random shenanigans that like spins out over the next couple of months after we're done with war.
I know.
But
well, it's funny because when you were talking Taylor earlier about like Chris showing up, different versions of Chris showing up every week, and that's the thing of like I would have my thing of like, oh, yeah, but it's not realistic, you know, like that, like we would just meet a new Chris every week, you know. And it's so funny because it's like it's D&D, but like still, I think even my silly ideas like I hope feel like that, like they still fit in the world. That like there's like I will have a reason why that person is there. Like Teague was there because he was like hoarding things in a house. He was like living in an abandoned goblin house, and then they just met him. You know, like I feel like I hope I can like connect those in a way where like just because the world is like really, you know, D&D can be, you know, the world is serious. There's also like very silly things in the world.
Yeah, but there's ridiculous stuff happening. Ridiculous people.
I think about like Chicago Fire, right? Like no. Like,
here's the best show of all time,
right? Like the people went to go see Chicago Fire after Vesk died, right? And there are comedy shows running in every city the day after people died, right? And so like
Yes.
you can live in
Yes.
a world that has darkness and also has levity, but it's still
Yeah.
grounded. And that's the part that like to me like I think have like done a good job of like even when there's like absurd things that like get us into the goofy space, it still feels like it kind of makes sense. It's still
I hope that
Oh,
session
for
was
sure.
the day after, and it was this joke I had that like Chicago Fire is a joke. I on community building I'll often give them feedback that says the podcast is great, but I wish you talked more about the TV show Chicago Fire. That's exactly how the joke started. And so then I wanted to do this like Chicago Fire session, and the idea was that there was this like playwright who thought this was the greatest play of all time, and so he was trying to use magic to imbue the play to make it better, and then the magic all went wrong, and like the puppets became like fire puppets who could like shoot fire. Like that's I mean
that's
that
a
seems
very like
within
classic D&D story.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a classic. Yeah,
like
it's great.
I've played in multiple like kind of Fungin Festival type sessions
Yep.
now, right? And like those are the, you know, Rich tried to kill me with murder puppets on the podcast, right? Like,
Yep.
that's
Yep.
all.
Yep.
That all
Yep.
makes sense.
I love a creepy murder puppet. Yeah, especially in D&D. And like, yeah, to your points, like it is super grounded. You know, like I don't know. That's what's cool. Like there is like a tethered kind of like granularity and like reality to like what's going on in that Glarendar West Marches, right? Like it can get ridiculous, and we're on like adventures to save flail snails and like jungle cruises and like you know. But like, come on, like we've all like there is like some like weight to it, and it feels like real. Like I don't know. The day after my character got killed, I took a whole bunch of adventurers and shrunk them and made them fight in a raspberry cobbler. You know what I mean?
Was it blueberry? I thought it was blueberry.
I think it was
what?
I feel like it was red on the map.
It was red.
Okay, I'll correct
might have
my
been
mental
strawberry.
record.
We're
I
probably
wasn't
both
correcting
wrong.
you. I was
Yeah.
just checking my own.
Raspberry, says Melissa.
Some
the record
Berenstein
keeper
Bears,
was.
Mandela
gosh,
effect
so-
stuff,
Oh
Troy.
boy!
Sorry.
Oh boy!
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I think it has to
There's
be
a
a
blueberry
collective
cobbler.
misremembrance for it to be a Mandela effect.
Maybe.
Not just Troy is dumb.
I
No, but,
I
like,
go to you as the
here's-
go-to
here's-
source for things. So
here-
if you have
here's
wrong
the example.
information,
I tell anyone who is like curious about like the post show like D&D Cap's world, it's like we live in a world where our pirate captains are named after Survivor players, and it kind of works, right? Like it is the most like extreme out there thing. It's not how I like if I were thinking of pirates in my own way, because we know how Troy feels about pirates. But yeah, but like we make it work, and that's what's really fun about it.
Well, there's space for all of it, right? That's what's so cool about like having that community, you know? Like it's been such a treat for me. We talk a lot about post-show recaps here, like because it's the place where like a bunch of us met each other, right? Like this particular show, Dragonfly, the core cast is like, you know, there's Taylor and Kurt, and like Kurt's somebody I met through fundamentally the post-show recaps reality, the arc, the extended, like Rob has a podcast community. But the rest of us all like met and got to know each other and started like playing D&D together. In that space, and we're all like creators there in our own ways, and it's become like a really powerful creative outlet for us as people and for the players participating, and I'm just like so excited about this weekend as we're like ramping up to it.
Yeah, what is this weekend
yeah.
going to be, Rich? What's the pitch?
So yeah, the pitch is for anybody out there who does not listen to post show recaps and is just like hanging out, starting at 10:30 a.m. Eastern on Friday morning, we're beginning our 40-hour marathon of D&D. And all the sessions will be connected. They're going to be featuring the Dungeon Masters and the players from post-show recaps, Discord D&D community. We got 8 different DMs running 9 sessions. Is that correct? And it is fundamentally the culmination of like 2 months of arc for war, as the players are going to be in a bunch of individual groups assaulting this stronghold in the Umber Marsh on the border between Aglarond and Thay, and trying to unseat this garrison of red wizards that have been stirring up shit for the last 6 months. And so it's going to be really rad. Like I think we've all like talked about it as the DM's planning. We have some really cool notions. I've like said to the players a couple of times, but it's like 3 chapters essentially. Those first 3 sessions is going to be like kind of chapter 1, the middle 3, chapter 2, and then we'll have chapter 3 at the end. Melissa, 40 hours, Smelly Cat. Melissa in the chat has like led the effort as we're like coordinating the like charity donations, as we're like doing all of this to raise money for charity, because we kind of haphazardly did so back in March, and we did like a damn good job accidentally. So we figured like let's like try to raise money for charity with intention this time and like see how good that is. But I'm just like beside myself. I'm ecstatic. I'm really excited to like run the sessions I have planned. I'm excited to play in it. And I'm so friggin' psyched to see what the rest of you guys are going to run, to like catch the rest of your sessions. And that's why like I'm excited. You know, Josh, the podfather of post-show recaps, is like cool to have a stream it here, so we can like record it. The VODs will be here forever for like any of us who want to like share in this with each other and aren't able to catch it live. But I'm like really out of my mind psyched. Like 31 years now, I could say I've been like playing this game, and like I've played for 40 hours, but that was with the same like smelly 5 high school kids drinking Mountain Dew in my buddy's basement when we were 17, you know? This is going to be wild. I mean, like, we're covering like how many continents? 4? It's insane. Mm-hmm. It's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any teasers of from Grace or Rich on what we can expect to see? Or leave it all behind the mysterious veil?
Yeah, so I'll say this. The opening session that I'll be running at 10:30 on Friday will be exciting, I think.
Mm-hmm. What a tease! You heard it here first, people.
I think that we're going to call back. I think that we're... I know. I think we're going to call back on... some really like foundational hallmarks of like the city of Glarendar and the organization that is Wanda. For like the folks that have like been hanging around for the last couple of months, I think we're gonna like hit on a couple of things that are gonna make them be like, I know that, that's the thing. They're gonna do like the Leo gif at the screen, you know. So it'll be good.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Grace, actually, don't answer that question because I'm playing in your session, so. Don't tell
I
me
can give
anything.
you like it's infiltrate, and yeah, that's the word.
Infiltrate.
Yeah.
Infiltrate.
Yeah. Get in. Yeah.
This isn't exactly a teaser to my session, but rather just to say the session I ran on Saturday, through use of a kind of teleportation nexus, they were able to peek out and see a field outside the fortress of Mirkold, and saw just casually collected out in the field hundreds of undead, ogres, orcs, and at least a dozen red wizards. At least. Outside the fortress.
You heard it here.
Oh, I have a better tagline for myself. People are dying to play in it. That's what I'll say.
If no PC dies, I will be shocked. It's not that I'm saying that's the goal. That's obviously not the goal. I'm just saying, for the level of threat that's going to be out there.
Wait, that's not the goal? So I just, for anybody out there, I keep like saying this to all the people that are involved. Like I'm not speaking like directly to the players as we're here streaming on my channel, but like for anybody out there who's like watching, should any unexpected or anticipated deaths occur over the 40 hours, please be gentle. Reach out to the poor players and the dungeon masters that are going to undergo this harrowing experience together. I'm sure that like when we all come out on the other side together, we'll be bonded even closer together. But there may be some like, you know,
there's a support team in place, as Melissa points out. Like, I mean, it is the thing. Like, we're going to war. It's like, I think a lot of combat heavy sessions. So I mean, the dice could go a bad way, and we're playing 9 sessions right in a row. So we've only had 1 death in 100+ sessions. So the odds are that somebody.
And I mean, it was just me.
Yeah.
So, like,
Yeah.
come on. What does that have to say about anything?
Is it 130 now?
Yep.
Wow.
Pretty close.
Wow.
We also have a lot more sessions without healers, or without like clerics at least.
Yeah.
Going. So
Yeah.
anyway, that's all that. I just want to say I'm very thankful for the clerics that exist in the Dragonfly universe and those who are willing and able to heal. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Hint, hint. Keep my hippo alive.
I'm pretty sure
I
you just
can't
moved out of
wait.
the set. You can't play in the session that I'm playing in, so that's bad news.
Well, I'm going to get in somewhere.
I know, but you're not in the session
100%.
with me now, so it's okay.
Sad. Figured out.
Fear. Yeah, there's fear there. I don't know. I don't need healing, man. Healing's overrated. I have plenty of hit points to be good.
You got that high AC.
So
Good, because I don't
it's really
I don't think you have much of any.
hit
And no
points.
healing floating around with you.
No, I
on
know.
Saturday.
Yeah, I know. I'm just bringing my really high AC. So
Me and my
That's all I got, man. I think I can get it a little bit higher. Well, I'm gonna try, but we'll see what happens. Anyway, I'm really excited for anybody hanging out here. Yeah, come catch us live Friday morning. We're gonna be rocking the whole thing here. I can't wait. I hope this was fun for you guys tonight to just sit around and chat a little bit about D&D. Like I love playing D&D. I really love talking about D&D, and so thank you for like letting me just take it easy tonight and not run while I'm a little banged up and under the weather and we're short
I
staffed.
love
good.
talking about D&D because I love nobody wants to listen to me talk about D&D in my everyday life, and the people who are like, what did you say, what's D&D? And I'm like, oh well. You want to hear? Because I'll tell you. And all of my friends go, oh.
Yeah.
This was the thing Taylor and I, like, for those who hang out in these parts, know, like, Taylor and I worked together for a time, and we would, like, go to work, and Taylor would show up and start talking to me about D&D, and then, like, our coworkers would be like, Taylor, we can't, you know, we're, like, speaking Latin, man, you know, they're like, staring at us like, do you I don't know what the hell they're talking.
My buddy who just joined the Discord who could play more D&D, specifically Shannon Planner, we were camping a few weekends ago, and it was like anytime it was just the two, we would like wait for somebody to leave, and it's like, okay, so like D&D, like in the last session, like yeah, and then it was like, or like we were talking about it, and like the like cooking and someone would come in and like, ugh, it's so annoying, but it's
I
so
gotta
fun.
say, I had a breakthrough with my family. My sister was here visiting, and I was telling her about the situation with Avalos, character who got taken at the end of a session and was off the grid, and we were trying to sort out like what's going to happen to him and like how does he come back on the grid and in what state and all that. And like I was just talking to someone else like, yo, I'm sorting through this, trying to figure this out, get some ideas. She's a creative person, blah blah. She likes this stuff, but like no interest in D&D, no interest in tabletop games, none of that. Okay, so we have this conversation, whatever, I forget about it. Like 2.5 weeks later, I just get a text from her, and she was like, did he ever get off the island? Did anyone ever save him? And I was like,
Amazing.
oh, that's really sweet.
That's amazing.
And also, yes, they did. They rescued him just yesterday. So, inadvertently, they almost killed him.
This is hilarious. I just want to say Smelly Cat, like I did that tattoo of like the isometric, the D4 to D6, like I went and priced it out like right before we all got locked down. That's the only reason I don't have it is because we had a pandemic. And
Yeah, I have my little
clutch tattoo.
death saving throws on my arm.
Taylor has death saving throws tattooed
I
on
do.
her
Wow.
arm. Did you guys know that?
No,
Yeah.
wow.
Wow.
These are her bubbles to fill out her death
Yes.
saves. When,
How very
she
Marisha Ray.
starts to
No.
do-
It
Yeah,
definitely was
it's
very
hardcore.
inspired by Marisha Ray, and I also, have Andoril on this arm that you can't really
Wow.
see.
Yeah, I'm like heartbroken. I love Andoril. I just can't believe I never got around to like tattooing it, but I'm so like proud of it.
Taylor, I love in the chat
Troy,
that you said that's rad. Rich and I today talking about the session, Bo said that's rad to each other's ideas at the same time. Like we had
Exactly
written each
the
other,
same
and then it
instant.
was just like that's rad. Like,
I
at the
was saying
same
that's
time.
rad.
Yeah.
That's rad.
So
Yeah.
often lately.
Yeah.
And I also just had a kind of a tangent. I had a realization that Lux is very similar to Drunk Taylor.
Oh yeah, I gotta try that.
I think that's why I like her. I think that's what,
Yeah,
like,
it's fantastic.
I
yeah.
get so loud when I'm drunk. I laugh really loudly, but I've always been like that. My mom yells at me all the time. She's like, how are you so loud in such a small little person? They're so loud. But anyway, that was random.
You got a lot of energy to share with the world. Yes. Well, I'm really glad that you had that moment, Troy, like with your family, not to like divert it too hard, but just to circle back for a moment. Like, I don't know, man. I like the last couple of years for me as D&D has become like so much more mainstream, like had this kind of like huge pop culture renaissance success. Like, I've had a few little beats like that are just surreal for me, right? Of like, I've been doing this for like so long and it was so like underground and kind of like shamed, you know? Like, I'm not like kidding when I say like I've gotten my ass kicked for like playing D&D, you know? Like, I've definitely like almost been stuffed in lockers and all that kind of like cliche stuff as a kid, you know? And it's so like rad to me when like people finally have that moment of like, oh, because for me it was like a few folks that I was like, you should just go check out Critical Role, and they'd be like, yeah, it's not for me, and then like, oh, like, yeah, I get it. That's so cool. And I just love that.
I ran for my brother and
That's rad.
and I ran for my brother and some of like our friends. At the end of it, they were just like how do we save this? Like, I want to keep playing. Like, we're on roll 20. I was like, no, we'll just play again. You know, it's like that was a cool moment of they were like, how do we like continue? Like, what do we do next? You know, of course, it's taken forever to schedule them all. Two of them are parents, dads, but of course we haven't played since. But we will at some point play again because it's fun.
It's a delight. I love playing D&D with you guys. It's really like been a treat. Like I say it all the time. I say it on all these things, but at this stage of my life, like it's the like fastest, easiest way that I have to like connect with other people and build like real meaningful relationships. And that's why like from time to time, like for those like who are not actually part of this group, we have this tendency to like get off of the call on Tuesday night. We end the show and then we like sit here and talk like this for 4 hours, right?
For normally long
as like we've
longer than the
played.
show.
Yeah. And so
it's gonna happen
that there's
today.
it's likely to happen to some extent. So I think that like there's just a lot of like value to be taken out of like those conversations, right? You get such like insight into the other people you're at the table with, and I like taking these kind of like opportunities once in a while to like just stop down like while we're recording all this, because that's one of the real treats of doing this shit on Twitch. Being able to like go back and rewatch a session that I DM'd is like one of the greatest tools I've found to try to like seek to improve week to week, right? And like do it differently and catch the things I don't like and the things that I do like. But I'm glad that we were able to spend the night and just like vibe a little bit and like share some like memories and some thoughts and all of that, some ideas about like this weird game that we all have so much fun with.
It was rad.
Yeah.
Good use of an evening. Yeah,
It was rad.
That's so rad.
It was rad. So, do you guys have any like last parting thoughts or anything else that like I should be addressing that we want to talk about before we go?
Don't open that can. We'll talk for
an
hour.
I know.
No, just
I
like
know.
come back and watch us next week or whenever we're back to regular shenanigans, and we're excited.
We are excited. Listen to Troy. He's a wise person. Is there anything you guys want to promote? Grace, what do you got going on?
Follow me on Twitter at @HiFromGrace. Check out Hold Up, a podcast I do. We talk about LGBTQ media. We released an episode last week on My Name is Earl. We watched the pilot, which like weirdly has like some queer themes. And next week we're talking about, I just recorded, Ugly Betty has a super transphobic episode in the first season, and it's like wild. So it's a really fun episode. So that comes out on Sunday. That's it.
Okay. Noted. Go follow Grace. Hi from Grace on Twitter. Taylor, how about you?
Ronnie4G2 on Twitter, twitch.tv/Ronnie4G2. I'll be on this Thursday. We are going to go do the Mages Tower and hopefully get help from the mages. They're currently
in Dragon Age.
Yes, the tower is currently being taken over by demons and abominations, and it's going to be really cool. So yeah, Dragon Age Origins.
Awesome. I love fighting demons and abominations. Troy, anything else you want to hype up?
No, nothing really in particular to promote. It is now August, and which is like shocking to me. So I'd just like to remind everyone that like it actually is August. Somehow that happened. That slipped in there.
Yeah.
The Olympics are happening right now, and even though it started out like with a lot of like bummer energy in my mind, I wasn't as excited. But like, boy, I got hooked hard, and I'm
right?
deeply enjoying that. So if anyone ever wants to talk about Olympics, you'll just let me know. I'm not going to talk about it now because I'll never stop. But it's good stuff. And if you're in the U.S. or Canada, take care of yourselves. Like things are getting a little spicy out there. And just be a voice of reason and support of science in the world. I'm in the part of the world where half of the population doesn't really do that, and it is very challenging. And we had a little bit of a scare in my family this weekend that thankfully was like it was a false scare, but it just like reinforces the idea of like there's real people out there who don't have access and aren't able to get a vaccine yet, even if they wanted to. And so your choices that you make, not to end with bummer energy, but just like the positive version is like,
it's not bummer energy.
Make good choices for yourself, but also remember you're part of a broader community, and that like it's a team sport. Surviving is a team sport as a human, and so let's do the best we can on that.
I have a friend who likes to say often, if you have a belly button, you're part of the family, like that's the thing, man. We all bleed red, like we're all like, no matter the things that come up between us, like we're all on the same side here, it's like us versus like the singular great enemy that comes for us all. And so like, just do your best, like try to be cool to people, right? Be excellent to one another, in the words of like the great sages. Anyway. Really hyped for Friday. Yes. Be excellent to each other.
Speaking
really
of a movie that holds up except for one line, that like there's one line in that movie which like slightly ruins it, but the rest of the movie I think holds up really well.
It's never like black and white. It's always like, yeah, if they cut out this part, the movie would be fine, So
yeah.
Not to spoil the end of every episode of Hold Up. It's never like yes or no.
I was just like, oh my god, this movie holds up, and they get to like one scene and I'm like, well, shit.
Nope.
Oops.
Like, okay, can I just like one little X-Acto knife? Okay, good, thank you.
We can in the modern age. This is a fortune we have. We could skip past things. But
you were on a rant about nice things in society. Be excellent to each other.
Yeah, we should be excellent to each other, man. Everybody be cool, like it's hard enough as it is out there. Let's all like try to be sensible, try to like be thoughtful, try to be kind to each other, and
take care of your belly buttons.
Yeah. I don't have my.
I was missing. I think I'm mixing some of the messages. Wash your belly button.
There's a metaphor in there.
Yeah.
Wash your belly button.
Put a mask on your belly button.
Take care of your shoes.
When indoors.
And
I don't have my "Don't forget to love each other" T-shirt on today. I have my "Stay salty" T-shirt on, which I've
come on, Taylor. Counter messaging.
But yes,
dilute the salt. Dilute the salt. Get a drink of water. Anyway, I'm Rich Filiberto. This is DM Philly. We'll be back on Friday morning, 40-hour marathon. Come hang out. It's going to be friggin' rad. For anybody out there who caught this and doesn't know, you should go to patreon.com/postshow-recaps and sign up to the $10 a month level to get to play D&D with us in the Discord and be in on like the backstage of our little marathon shenanigans. But I can't wait. That's it. That's all I got. So we'll see you guys in a couple days. Bye.
Bye.